Good afternoon. Thanks for sticking around and quieting down after a long day. I have a lot of slides, and so I'm gonna go through these fairly quickly. Basically, I'm gonna explain what our research program, the EPIC research program, is at the Energy Commission, and the kinds of things we fund, and how we're funded, and how we allocate resources, and how we have provided some funding to the WCC in the past, and we will talk a little bit about our future direction, so you guys have a handle on that. Let me see. Forward. Okay, the EPIC program, the money is collected from utility ratepayers, from the investor-owned utilities, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, and Pacific Gas and Electric, and Southern California Gas. And this is our basic research structure. We call this the Energy Innovation Pipeline. And we have three different types of research that we invest in. We invest in basic research, what most of us think of as research, is what we call applied research and development, where we're testing out ideas, building things in the lab, trying to figure out if they'll work, ground truthing them, and that sort of thing. The next stage is technology demonstration and deployment, where we take something that's worked out in the lab and we use and maybe is starting to make a little bit of a dent in the marketplace, and try to put those things out in the field and do testing to collect data on finding out what kind of impacts we're likely to see from future investments. And then once we get through that stage, we have market facilitation, where the idea is to get these ideas that have been tested in the field, those that are successful, and get them out into the real world by actually helping markets develop and helping these technologies get into the marketplace. Our general funding areas are energy efficiency, clean generation. We invest in a lot in smart grid, actually. There's a category that we allocated some money for in our last investment plan, and in this next investment plan called Cost Share for Federal Awards. It, of course, presumes there will be federal awards. We do invest in renewables and demand response, and we put Cost of Share for Federal Awards in twice because we thought it was important. And then we also look on the market facilitation side. We look at supporting entrepreneurs who are trying to get new technologies and new ideas out into the marketplace. We look at local implementation strategies, and we're looking at our behavior side is looking at streamlined customer adoption. All right, most of our efforts are driven by California public policy, with which most of you are familiar. Some of the folks from out of the state might not be as much, but we have our renewable portfolio standard, where we have to 50% of our electricity has to come from renewable resources by 2030. Greenhouse gas reduction, targets for storage, electricity storage, doubling energy efficiency goals by SB 350 goals, our ZEV mandates, and also our work to try to develop ways to implement clean energy technologies in disadvantaged communities and find out a way to make the market work for that sort of thing. Okay, one of the drivers, which is a little bit of a shift for us in this next investment plan, will be towards an increased focus towards low-income and disadvantaged communities. And this was we conducted a study in 2015 and 16 that was adopted as a result of SB 350. We have the low-income barrier study, which a number of recommendations to help us get into disadvantaged and low-income communities, both with our research efforts and with the impacts, and that's an important distinction. There's sort of two foci that we're trying to go for here. One of them is that when we're doing research projects, especially technology demonstration and development projects, the middle part of our pipeline, where we have a lot of money go out into the field, the legislature is very interested in us making sure some of that money is being used in areas that most can use the economic development that results from even that relatively small amount of money. But they feel the legislature felt like that if we're spending research money to go out and do demonstrations, that there ought to be some benefit to low-income and disadvantaged communities where possible, and so that's one of our focuses. The other is to consider that our research efforts also take into account not just technologies which are only going to benefit the general population, but ones that have some sort of focus in benefiting, having a unique benefit to low-income communities. For instance, multifamily housing, that sort of thing. Instead of focusing just on residential homeowners, focus on multifamily rental housing and that sort of thing to benefit those communities. All right. This is just a pie chart with too small a type on the right side for how the EPIC funds have been awarded through 2017, April through last month. The big chunk here is in energy efficiency. The second largest is in energy deployment and market facilitation. The larger wedge over there, the 19, is in renewables and advanced generation, and then environmental, renewable transportation, and energy technology systems integration is the rest of that. And we have separate funding stream for natural gas. It's consistent with the old public interest energy research program. It's not EPIC, but it's funded by the gas side of the two combined utilities and Southern California Gas. And again, the majority or the plurality goes to energy efficiency, and there's that large 22% chunk in the corner is transportation. All right, we have to develop an investment plan every 3 years for the use of our EPIC funds, and we've been through 2 cycles so far, and we're still awarding the last of the 2015 through 17 money. The 2018 through 2020 investment plan is now up for review, and if any of you have not read it and would like to go through it and see if you want to provide some direction that you think is important to us, that it is available on our website, and we are taking comments. It has not yet been adopted by the Commission. We have submitted it to the Public Utilities Commission, but the forum would be to provide comments to the Public Utilities Commission at this point, because it's over in their court, and they have to approve it in order for us to be able to spend the money, because they're the ones collecting the money from the ratepayers. You don't need the history of when the scoping workshops were. You can find it on our website. And the slide you really want to see is the links on my very last slide, so you have to stay around for that. The way we're dividing the money in or we propose to divide the money in the 2018 plan is $140 million to applied research development, $151.7 to technology development and deployment and demonstration, and 58.3 to market facilitation for a total of $350 million. And then there's an administrative charge, which that's my salary. All right, the strategic objectives of the plan, you can read as well as I can. The top 8, 4 of these are of interest to this, are of particular interest to this audience. I'll leave it there a second so you can actually read through them, rather than listen to me talk through them, which is bad for the recording, isn't it? But oh well, we were committed. All right, ready to move on. You can get a copy of this later from the WCEC. The first strategic objective that is of interest. What did I just do? Did I hit something? I may have not done anything. Is there a blackout button on this? Here. I did do it. There's a button that I didn't know what it did on this, and I must have bumped it. All right. The first strategic objective is it's basically energy efficiency, and so there are a number of different sort of directions we'd like to go. They're fairly broad, but we're looking at plug loads, control platforms, building envelopes, and solid-state lighting for the main examples, although others can fit in, and that sort of illustrates that for our investments towards air conditioning that are different HVAC systems, we're thinking a lot about control systems and how to get the systems that are out in the marketplace now to perform in a way that both reduces consumption and contributes to the integration of renewable resources by having some sort of control capability to know when there is power being produced that needs to be absorbed and when we need to reduce consumption in basically demand response to sort of follow the renewable generation where possible and minimize carbon emissions from the electricity generation sector. We want to focus on hard-to-reach market sectors, particularly disadvantaged communities. And then a couple of more focused areas, the transition from traditionally natural gas equipment to electricity, which is a policy direction we're trying to go to sort of start moving away from gas water heaters and gas furnaces primarily towards electric equipment that can utilize PV and wind. And so we're looking at heat pumps and the work. WCEC has done some good work on ground source heat pumps in the past and is still working on those sorts of things. I think you're still under contract for some of that work. And we're looking also at industrial decarbonization strategies, particularly for process heat. And then there's a little bit of thought that at some point there will be DC buildings. So why are we generating electricity on the roof and converting it to AC and then converting it back to DC to run electronics and run equipment? And so looking at trying to explore what kinds of opportunities are there is one of the things we're going to be looking at, and that's mostly going to be in applied research and development. We're not ready to go full into technology demonstration and development, I don't believe, until at least in this next investment plan. Now this is, I sort of hinted at this earlier, we're looking at system flexibility. The idea that we want, when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining, we want to use power then. When it's not blowing and it's not shining and we're using backup gas, that we minimize the consumption during the high carbon times. There's also the need to moderate and balance the system, the ancillary services for the grid that is ramping and frequency regulation and that sort of thing, where the demand side can provide some of those services that are traditionally provided by natural gas generators, and so we're looking into exploring ways to do that and different technologies and control strategies that can facilitate just basically ramping using the demand side to moderate load so that it can absorb the maximum amount of renewable generation. Right now, during the middle of the day, we're actually over generating, and we're not using all of the available renewable generation that we have available to us right now. And so we're trying to figure out ways to use that and control and give the grid the best operational profile that we can. We have the idea that we're going to be able to encourage entrepreneurship and provide opportunities for innovators and entrepreneurs to be able to get their technology into the marketplace. We're starting that now. We have some We have some programs where we provide where we've engaged contractors to provide services to entrepreneurs to help them get new energy ideas into the marketplace, and we're going to expand on that. And of course, as I've talked about before earlier, we're going to work in try to make sure that we can make the technologies do technology work and do our demonstrations in disadvantaged communities. All right, I'm going to quickly zip through what we've been doing in efficiency research. We've done, and some of you will recognize some of these pictures. But we're doing, in buildings, we're doing lighting and HVAC, plug loads. We're in the commercial sector, we're doing, for example, we've done work in food service and laundry. And in the industrial sector, we've worked in food processing, water and irrigation efficiency, data centers, and on top of that, we've put a lot of effort into water transport and water treatment facilities, trying to reduce energy consumption in those sectors. I'm going to just slide through these. This is a number of examples of different projects. Some of them were done here, so I'm just going to slowly bump through these, and again, you can look back at the slides because I'm going to burn too much time. This is where I'm putting it's too many slides, so this is the slide I can go past. Okay, and we've seen this. We've seen this before. Let's look. And Dick, was this what we were talking about? Dick's innovation a little early. Yeah, the first patent that we told you about. There's Dick. Is that you rolling that out? No. So, all right. Another focus that we're moving towards at the Energy Commission, and this is the result of AB 78 from 2011 or 12, is the idea that a lot of the work we've been doing in the past has been developing technologies that go into new construction, and the legislature has directed us to spend a lot more time looking at the existing building stock and try to improve, figure out a way to improve efficiency in existing buildings. And that's really easy to do if you have an open checkbook and a lot of time. We don't have either of those things. And so the question becomes, how do you develop a marketplace in which the guys that are replacing the HVAC systems when they break and replacing the water heaters when they break and putting on roofs or putting in insulation or doing any of those kinds of improvements to homes during remodels and that sort of thing, how can those marketplaces evolve to where they're doing a better job promoting more efficient equipment rather than what's on the back of the truck and legal, and try to get the installation quality up to where it needs to be. And also, how do you build more of a market so that people are more interested in doing energy efficiency retrofits in their homes when people would rather do a kitchen or do windows, which are not necessarily the best solution. So how do we build a marketplace for that? And that's a conundrum that we're tasked with sort of figuring out a solution to. So let's see. We're also doing plug load research, looking at ways to where we're not preempted by the feds for improving the quality of or the energy consumption characteristics of appliances and electronics. We're doing some work there a lot, and we've already done a lot. Most of the big appliances are already done, and we're preempted from doing anything else because the feds our Department of Energy has preempts us from adopting standards that are more stringent than the federal standards. And so the big all the white goods are already under that, and a lot of the electronics. But we managed to do do battery charger standards and TV standards over the past 5 to 8 years, and we got in ahead of the feds, and so we actually sort of set the bar for federal regulations on those things. All right, building efficiency standards, and I'm not an expert on our building efficiency standards. I'm merely familiar, and there are some other folks in the audience today who can help if anyone has questions. We do our building standards every 3 years now and update them. We have the 2016 standards, and we're moving on, and we're in the process right now of developing the 2019 standards. Let's see. Oh, yes. Let me go back. This is the basic history slide. This is why I have this slide, is for this quote. This is our authority to prescribe our regulation, building design, and construction standards that increase the efficiency and the use of energy and water for new residential and non-residential buildings. The standards development timeline, 2016, we did the original stakeholder outreach and identifying measures that were of interest. Proposals were submitted in the rulemaking to the commission, and rulemaking has begun, and this is the part of the process we're in right now. There will be additional time for review and comment and responses, and they will be the standards are scheduled to be adopted at the end of 2018 or the early 2019, and the standards will become effective January 1st, 2020. Utility-funded codes and standards enhancement studies. Where do we as a state agency get the information in order to develop our standards recommendations? Fact is that is part of what the utilities do under their efficiency programs funded under PUC directs the utilities to invest in energy efficiency research, and they do codes and standards enhancement studies in order to come up with, to develop the empirical basis for making these standards recommendations and making sure that they're feasible and cost effective as per the law. They evaluate products, conduct engineering assessments, develop use cases, collect data on duty cycles, develop test procedures which have to be adopted, propose metrics, and estimate savings potential so that this commission can go into the standards making process with our eyes wide open on this. The case studies under consideration for the 2019 standards are cooling tower minimum efficiency. These are all proposals at this point, and there is still time for input on these, but the cooling tower efficiency is a prescriptive requirement. The recommendation is for no less than 80 gallons per minute per horsepower. Cooling towers are not a covered product, which is legal speak for a product that the federal government has the authority to create standards for as a covered product, and those products are specifically named in the Energy Policy Act of 2007 and in prior standards. If a particular device is not named in those, they're not a covered product, and if the Department of Energy has not developed standards on them, then the Energy Commission or other states are free to develop standards. So we're looking at economizer fault detection diagnostics. We're looking at as buildings get tighter, of course, air exchange rates become an important factor, and there's been a lot of ink spilled and a lot of time spent at ASHRAE thinking about these things. And so ASHRAE 90.1 talks about fan system powered, exhaust air energy recovery, and those sorts of things. And so there are some proposals in the works developed based on ASHRAE 90.1. And we're updating our watts per CFM criterion to align with the 2019 DOE residential furnace standards for residential air handlers. And this is the slide you really wanted to see, and I probably could have skipped the rest of them. Here's where you can get the information you need on our website. The general research program is at the top. Upcoming solicitations, there are still a few in the works for the 2015 through 17 investment plan. Our innovation showcase is the place where you would go for a high-level primer on all of the research that we're currently doing by project. Our full set of detailed research reports are available at this, and the codes and standards proceedings for that we were talking about earlier for the case studies, where the case studies are represented and the proceedings built around our standards development are at this link here. And I am happy to take any questions and answer the ones that I'm capable of answering. Thank you. Seeing none, I will take the opportunity to leave the stage and hand it over to Jareen Ahmed from Southern California Edison, who's going to tell you what, he's going to try to tell you what Edison is doing in their emerging technologies program.
I was just going to take questions, you already did a fine job. So.
Well, you just need to go to your last slide. That's my recommendation.